The obsidian chamber pulsed with an unnatural heartbeat, the walls weeping with rivulets of crimson fire that cast writhing shadows across the polished stone floor. The very air felt thick, charged with dark magic that made breathing difficult for anyone not accustomed to Draven's realm. Ancient runes carved into the walls flickered ominously, their magic resonating with the oppressive atmosphere. Draven reclined on his jagged throne, each deliberate tap of his claw-like nails against the obsidian sending tiny sparks of malevolent energy dancing across its surface. His crimson eyes blazed with cold fury as he studied the broken figure before him. The captain, once proud and fearsome, now knelt in chains that hummed with suppression magic, their runes pulsing in sync with his struggles. Each link was inscribed with ancient binding magic, designed not just to hold, but to drain its victim's strength. "Explain." Draven's voice sliced through the heavy air, each syllable dripping with venom. The chamber itself seemed to react, the shadows drawing closer as if hungry for the captain's response. "How did a so-called elite captain of mine fail to capture a mere goblin thief?" The captain raised his head slightly, his once bright eyes now dulled by the chain's magic. Despite his position, a spark of defiance still burned within them. "It was Silas, my lord, the Shadow Realm's enforcer. He—" "Silas?" Draven cut him off, rising from his throne with fluid grace that belied his imposing stature. His armoured boots struck the stone floor with purpose, each step releasing small bursts of dark energy that rippled outward. "You mean to tell me that a mere keeper of a drinking establishment thwarted one of my chosen warriors?" The captain's jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck straining against the chains. "The bar's magic is ancient, my lord. Its rules are bound in power, older than—" He choked as the chains constricted, the runes flaring brightly. "Spare me your excuses." Draven's voice dropped lower, somehow more terrifying in its quietness. He circled the captain like a predator, his presence making the very air crackle with malevolent energy. The shadows followed his movement, eager to please their master. "You were outmaneuvered by a bartender and his bouncers. Your failure reflects on me, Captain, on my realm." The captain struggled to speak through the constricting chains. "I underestimated their defences. It won't happen again." "No," Draven agreed, his lips curling into a cruel smile that revealed teeth too sharp to be human. "It won't." He raised a hand, dark energy coalescing around his fingers. The chains responded, tightening further until the captain could barely breathe. "Because I am giving you one final chance to prove your worth." From the deepest shadows of the chamber emerged a figure that seemed to be made of darkness itself. Azaron, his crimson robes rippling with barely contained power, stepped into the firelight. Glowing runes crawled across his exposed skin like living things, pulsing with barely contained magical energy. His presence added a new weight to the already oppressive atmosphere. "This is Azaron," Draven announced, satisfaction evident in his tone as he noted the tension between his two servants. "A master of shadow magic, and far more competent than you've proven to be, Captain. He will ensure your success, one way or another." Azaron's voice was silk over steel, each word carefully measured. "I trust the captain understands that failure is no longer an option. My magic doesn't suffer fools." The captain's eyes flashed with barely suppressed rage, his pride warring with his predicament. "I don't need a babysitter, especially not some spell-wielding." The chains tightened again, cutting off his protest. Draven's amusement was palpable. "You've lost the right to pride, Captain. You will work with Azaron, and you will bring me both the goblin and the gem. Alive." His expression darkened. "The gem she carries is more valuable than you can comprehend. It is a key to power beyond your limited understanding." With a gesture that tore at the fabric of reality itself, Draven opened a portal. The swirling vortex of darkness seemed to drink in the chamber's crimson light, its edges crackling with unstable energy. The chains finally fell away from the captain, though the runes had left their mark on his armor and pride. "Take 5 of my elite enforcers," Draven commanded. "Show this pathetic Earth realm why my warriors are feared across the realms. But remember, the goblin must live. I have plans for her that require a beating heart." As the captain and Azeron stepped through the portal, tension crackling between them, Draven returned to his throne. The shadows coiled around him like eager pets as he smiled, imagining the chaos to come. "Run while you can, little thief," he murmured to the empty chamber. "Your gem calls to powers you cannot begin to understand, and soon, very soon, you'll learn why." The chamber fell silent save for the constant weeping of crimson fire, the air thick with anticipation of violence to come. The brownstone was alive with a warm, cosy glow as the team settled in after dinner. The scent of faintly spiced tea lingered in the air, mingling with the soft crackle of a fire in the hearth. Ancient wards pulsed through the walls like a heartbeat, their magic so familiar it had become a comfort rather than a concern. Evelyn was curled up in her favourite chair by the window, her grimoire open on her lap, its pages faintly luminescent in the firelight. Her fingers traced protective runes in the margins as she worked, each symbol adding to her growing understanding of the gem's power. The blue energy of the brownstone's wards shimmered against the dark glass like aurora borealis, steady and strong. Across the room, Caleb lounged on the couch with practiced casualness that didn't quite hide his constant vigilance. His sharp eyes tracked Argoz as she sat cross-legged on the floor, the celestial gem cradled in her hands. Its light cast dancing shadows across her features, her yellow eyes reflecting its power even through her human disguise. "You keep poking at that thing," Caleb said, his voice carrying both amusement and genuine concern. "And one day it's going to poke back harder than it did to me. Still can't feel my fingertips properly after last time." Argoz shot him a look that was pure goblin despite her human appearance. "It didn't like you because you tried to take it. It knows who it belongs to." "Says the thief," Caleb teased, though there was no malice in his tone. "Tell that to my scorched hand." Evelyn sighed, though her lips twitched with poorly hidden amusement. "If you two are quite finished, some of us are trying to work. These texts about ancient artifacts won't translate themselves." The casual banter continued until the first warning came, a subtle shift in the brownstone's magical defences. The steady pulse of the wards faltered, like a skipped heartbeat. Evelyn's head snapped up, her amusement vanishing as she felt the change in the house's protective magic. The gem in Argoz's hands flared suddenly, its light intensifying as though responding to an unseen threat. The comfort of their evening shattered as the wards began to pulse with increasing urgency, their blue glow now sharp and warning. "Something's wrong," Evelyn said, closing her grimoire with careful precision. "The wards, they're reacting to something powerful." Caleb was already on his feet, all pretense of relaxation gone. His hand moved to the weapon at his side as the floor trembled beneath them. "Multiple signatures, or just one big one?" "Both," Evelyn replied grimly, her fingers weaving a quick detection spell. "They're organised, professional, and they're testing the house's defences." Argoz stood slowly, the gem clutched protectively against her chest. Its light pulsed in sync with the brownstone's failing wards, as though the two magics were communicating. "Draven," she whispered, her voice tight. "He found us." The house groaned, its ancient magic straining against whatever force pressed against it. Outside, shadows seemed to deepen unnaturally, and the night air grew heavy with the weight of approaching battle. "Everyone ready?" Caleb asked, his voice steady despite the tension. "Because I don't think they're here for tea. The brownstone shuddered violently, its enchantments flaring a brilliant blue before dimming under the force of an explosion. When the front door splintered inward, it didn't just break, it disintegrated into a shower of burning splinters as a wave of dark fire cascaded through. The house's protective wards screamed in protest, their steady hum turning into a discordant wail that set teeth on edge. Azeron, Draven's mage, stood in the smouldering doorway like a nightmare-given form. Dark energy crackled around his robed figure, the runes etched into his skin, pulsing with malevolent power. Each step he took left scorch marks on the floor, the house's magic recoiling from his corrupted presence. "Argoz," he intoned, his voice carrying unnatural weight. "Lord Draven sends his regards. You can come willingly, or we can demonstrate why his elite forces are feared across the realms." The captain and his enforcers poured in behind Azeron, their movements displaying lethal precision. Their weapons hummed with dark magic, each blade and mace inscribed with runes that seemed to devour light. The very air grew heavy with the weight of their combined power. The brownstone fought back with everything it had. Doors slammed shut with enough force to crack frames. Walls rippled as defensive runes blazed to life. A crystalline barrier manifested across the main hallway, only to shatter with a sound like breaking glass when an enforcer's runed weapons struck it. "Stay together." Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos as she threw up a barrier of pure magical force. The shield sparkled with intricate patterns, each layer reinforcing the next as it absorbed a blast from Azeron that would have reduced them to ash. The captain's blade sang through the air as he drew it, the weapon radiating an aura of such malevolence that nearby furniture began to rot. "Take them down," he snarled. "But remember, the goblin belongs to Lord Draven." Argoz stood rooted in the center of the chaos, the gem pulsing frantically against her palm, in time with her racing heart. Azeron's magic twisted through the air like living shadows, each tendril radiating corrupted power that made the brownstone's very foundations groan in protest. The captain's mocking laughter echoed as Evelyn's shield, their last defense, began to crack like ice under pressure. "The witch falls first!" Azeron's voice cut through the chaos with deadly precision. His hands moved in complex patterns, dark energy coiling around his fingers like hungry serpents. "Let me show you true power." "Evelyn!" Argoz's scream tore from her throat as Azeron's spell struck. Evelyn's face contorted with effort, her hands blazing with blue light as she fought to maintain the shield. For a moment it held, her magic flaring brilliantly against the darkness. But Azeron's power was relentless, twisting and writhing until it found the smallest crack. The shield exploded in a shower of magical shards as dark tendrils wrapped around Evelyn's limbs, yanking her into the air. She fought desperately, her fingers sparking with failing magic as Azeron's power constricted around her. Each attempt at spellcasting was smothered before it could form, her strength draining visibly with each passing second. "Such potential," Azeron's voice dripped with cruel amusement as he gestured, tightening the magical bonds. "But you're playing at power, little witch, while I command it. Your parlor tricks are nothing compared to true mastery." Evelyn's resistance faltered, her voice barely a whisper as her eyes began to close. "Argoz! Caleb! Run!" Her body went limp in Azeron's magical grasp, unconscious or worse. "No!" Caleb's roar shook the room, primal fury transforming his voice into something barely human. His body rippled as he channeled the essence of a bear, muscles bulging and thickening as raw power flooded through him. The nearest enforcer barely had time to register the change before Caleb's fist connected with crushing force, sending him careening through a wooden table that splintered on impact. Pure rage fueled his movements as another enforcer charged. Caleb dropped low, his enhanced strength letting him drive forward with devastating force. They crashed to the ground together, Caleb's hands finding the enforcer's throat with deadly precision. The enforcer's eyes widened behind his helm as Caleb's grip tightened, enhanced strength threatening to crush his windpipe. But in his fury, Caleb missed the captain's silent approach. The runed blade struck with surgical precision, sinking deep into the meat of his shoulder. Caleb's agonized roar echoed through the brownstone as dark magic from the blade seeped into the wound, weakening his enhanced strength. The remaining enforcers seized their chance, moving as one to overwhelm him. Despite his injury, Caleb fought like a cornered animal, but each movement sent fresh waves of burning pain through his shoulder. Dark blood dripped steadily from the wound as the captain's corrupted blade did its work. "Get off me!" His snarl was more animal than human now, but the enforcer's combined weight and strength finally proved too much. His legs buckled as the dark magic spread through his system, his breathing turning ragged with pain and exhaustion. Argoz stood frozen, the horror of seeing her friends defeated crashing over her in waves. The gem pulsed frantically in her hand, its warmth pushing against the ice of her fear, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the nightmare unfolding. Evelyn hung motionless in Azaron's magical grasp, her usual vibrant energy extinguished, while Caleb bled and struggled against the enforcers, pinning him down. The captain approached with predatory grace, his corrupted blade leaving trails of darkness in the air. Behind him, Azaron's eyes gleamed with cruel anticipation, fixed on the gem that trembled in Argoz's grip. "It's over, little goblin," the captain's voice dripped with malicious satisfaction. "Surrender now, and perhaps I'll be merciful. The gem for their lives, a simple trade." His blade twitched toward Caleb's throat. "Though I can't promise the mage won't want to experiment with your friends." The gem's pulse matched her racing heart, its energy flowing through her veins like liquid starlight. But the sight of Caleb's blood dripping onto the floor, the memory of Evelyn's body going limp, it paralyzed her with indecision. "Argoz!" Caleb's voice was raw with pain but carried steel beneath it. "Run! Get to Rose! Do it! Now!" "No." The word tore from her throat, thick with tears she refused to let fall. Her gaze darted between her fallen friends, desperation clawing at her chest. "I can't leave you here, I won't!" Azaron's laughter cut through the room like broken glass. Such loyalty. Such weakness. His magic tightened around Evelyn's unconscious form. "You cling to power you can't comprehend, little thief. Be wise. Give me the gem, and I'll ensure their deaths are relatively painless." The gem burned against her palm now, its energy surging through her with increasing urgency. But the weight of choice pressed down on her like a mountain, tears blurring her vision. "Caleb, I can't—" "Yes, you can!" Caleb's voice cracked like a whip despite his wounds. "This isn't about us, it's about keeping that gem from Draven. If he gets it, everything ends. Now go!" The captain lunged, but the gem reacted instinctively, releasing a pulse of pure energy that drove him back. His snarl of rage echoed as the remaining enforcers advanced, their runed weapons humming with dark power. "Last chance, goblin," the captain's voice promised violence. "Submit, or watch them suffer." Argoz's whole body trembled, the gem's power warring with her heart. She met Caleb's fierce gaze one last time, seeing in his eyes the strength she needed to find. "I'll come back for you," she whispered, her voice thick with promise. "I swear it." "Go!" Caleb's final shout was almost a roar as he thrashed against his captors, buying her precious seconds. Argoz spun and ran, each step fueled by desperation and the gem's pulsing energy. The brownstone itself seemed to fight for her, its ancient magic responding to her need. Doors flew open before her and slammed shut behind, their locks engaging with heavy thuds that echoed through the halls. The house's wards flared and twisted, creating a maze of barriers to slow her pursuers. "Don't let her escape!" Azaron's rage-filled command cracked through the air like thunder. "Take her down!" Dark energy ripped through the hallway, the corrupted magic so potent it left scorched trails in the walls. The gem reacted instantly, its light blazing as it threw up a shield of pure energy. The impact of Azeron's spell against the barrier sent Argoz staggering, the force nearly driving her to her knees. But the gem's warmth steadied her, urging her forward. The brownstone's back door exploded outward at her approach, the house's final act of defiance clearing her escape route. She burst into the cold night air, her lungs burning with each desperate breath, her muscles screaming in protest. But the gem pulsed against her chest like a second heartbeat, its power flowing through her veins, pushing her beyond normal limits. Argoz tore through the night-shrouded streets, each footfall carrying the weight of her guilt. The images replayed in her mind like a brutal loop. Evelyn suspended lifeless in Azeron's dark magic, Caleb bleeding and restrained, fighting to buy her time. The captain's mocking smile and the sound of Caleb's final shout haunted her steps. The gem pulsed steadily against her chest, its warmth trying to comfort her, to remind her she'd made the only choice she could. But it couldn't wash away the bitter taste of abandonment, the crushing knowledge that she'd left them behind. "I'll come back," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion as tears stung her eyes. "I swear I'll find a way. I'll save them." The gem flared softly in response, but even its reassuring power couldn't fill the hollow space where her friends should be. "I have to." The neon glow of the Shadow Realm bar cast fractured reflections across the rain-slick street outside, its light a beacon in the darkness. Inside, the usual evening symphony played out, the clink of glasses, the low murmur of deals being struck, the faint pulse of magic that seemed to beat within the very walls. Rose occupied her corner booth like a queen holding court, one hand curled around a glass of liquid that glowed with an otherworldly, amber light. Her dark eyes swept the room with practiced precision, catching every subtle movement, every whispered conversation. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light as she raised her glass, its sparkle as sharp and deliberate as her gaze. The door exploded inward with enough force to rattle glasses and silence conversations. Rain and wind rushed in, carrying with them a figure that seemed more shadow than substance. Argoz stumbled forward, her human disguise flickering at the edges, revealing glimpses of her true goblin form beneath. Her yellow eyes burned with desperate fear, and the gem clutched to her chest pulsed erratically, its light matching her ragged breathing. "Rose!" The name tore from her throat, raw with exhaustion and panic. Rose set her glass down with deliberate calm, though her eyes narrowed at Argoz's state. "Well," she drawled, masking concern with sarcasm, "you certainly know how to make an entrance." A massive figure, one of the bar's more supernatural patrons, moved to intercept Argoz. But Rose's hand lifted in a casual gesture that carried absolute authority. "Let her pass." The words were soft but filled the room with quiet command. Argoz collapsed into the chair opposite Rose, her hands trembling as she placed the gem on the table. Its usual steady glow had dimmed to an uneven flutter like a failing heartbeat. "They took them," she managed, each word weighted with guilt and fear. "Draven's men. They have Caleb and Evelyn. The brownstone. I had to—" Her voice cracked, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Rose's carefully maintained expression hardened into something dangerous. She leaned forward, all pretense of casual indifference falling away. "Tell me everything. Now." "A mage," Argos's words tumbled out between gasping breaths. "And the captain with enforcers. They broke through the wards like they were nothing. Evelyn tried to shield us, but the mage, he just—" Her hands clenched into fists. "Caleb told me to run, to find you, but they're going to kill them if I don't go back." The room had gone deathly quiet, other patrons pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Rose ignored them all, her focus razor-sharp on Argoz. "We'll get them back," Rose said, her voice carrying steel beneath its smoothness. "But not by charging in blind. Draven doesn't make moves like this without reason. We need to think. Think! Argoz slammed her palms on the table, her human disguise slipping further to reveal more of her goblin features. Every second we wait is a second they stay alive, Rose cut in, her tone sharp enough to slice through Argoz's panic. Draven wants the gem, which means he wants you alive. He'll keep them alive as bait. So sit down, breathe, and let me figure out how to turn this to our advantage. The gem pulsed once brightly as if responding to Rose's words. Argoz stared at her, chest heaving, before slowly sinking back into her chair. Rose signalled the bartender without taking her eyes off Argoz. Get her something strong, and send word to Silas. We need the back room. Her fingers brushed the magic-dampening bracelet on her wrist, a habit she'd developed when deep in thought. You did the right thing coming here. Now let me show you why. The quiet authority in her voice seemed to settle something in Argoz. She nodded, clutching the gem close as Rose's mind visibly began working through possibilities, plotting moves and countermoves in a game where the stakes had just become lethal. As the bartender moved to comply, Rose's attention fixed on Argoz with laser focus, her usual sharp humour giving way to something more serious. You did the right thing coming here, she said, her voice carrying an unusual gentleness. Now, let me show you why I'm more than just talk. Argoz nodded, her fingers white-knuckled around the gem as the full weight of her choices pressed down on her. The bar's atmosphere had shifted from its usual buzz to something more electric, the quiet that falls before a thunderstorm breaks. Silas! Rose's voice cut through the tension like a blade, carrying the kind of authority that made even the most dangerous patrons freeze mid-motion. She stood, her presence suddenly filling the room despite her height. The bar's proprietor emerged from the shadows as if he'd been waiting for her call. Silas moved with the quiet confidence of someone who commanded respect without needing to demand it. His calm demeanour carried an edge as he took in the scene before him. I need the trunk, Rose said, the simple statement heavy with meaning. Silas's eyebrow arched, his sharp gaze moving from Rose to Argoz, then to the pulsing gem between them. The brief flicker of surprise in his expression spoke volumes. The trunk. You must be desperate indeed to open those old wounds. Desperate doesn't scratch the surface, Rose replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. Draven's elite forces just breached my safe house. They have Evelyn and Caleb, and they're hunting for her. She jerked her head toward Argoz. And that gem she's carrying? It's worth more than either of us suspected. Silas's usually unflappable demeanour hardened into something more dangerous. The air around him seemed to thicken with power as he nodded once decisively. Follow me, he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. Both of you. Silas led them down a narrow hallway where shadows seemed to breathe. The door at the end radiated power, its protective runes pulsing like constellations across its ancient surface. His whispered incantation made the wards flare brilliant blue before parting like a curtain. The air inside crackled with contained energy, as if the very room remembered what it protected. In the centre sat a trunk that commanded attention, not through size or ornamentation, but through pure presence. Its surface was a masterwork of runic artistry, each symbol carefully carved and imbued with purpose. The magic emanating from it felt alive, waiting. This is what you wanted, Silas said softly, his usual stoic demeanour tinged with something like reverence. Are you sure you're ready? Rose approached the trunk with deliberate steps. When her hand touched the lid, the runes responded instantly, not just glowing but singing with recognition. The seals dissolved beneath her touch as the lid opened with a whisper of contained power. Inside lay pieces of her past, waiting to be reclaimed. The armour caught the light like captured flame, each plate a testament to masterful craftsmanship. Fire-kissed metal gleamed with runic patterns designed to harness and direct Rose's wild magic. Beside it, her enchanted bullwhip coiled like a sleeping serpent, its ember glow promising lethal grace. "Haven't seen you in that since before the bracelet," Silas observed, his tone careful. "Since before Gunner." Rose's fingers traced the armor's runes with unexpected tenderness, a ghost of a smile playing across her lips. Her silence spoke volumes about memories both bitter and sweet. "It's time," she said finally, her voice soft but certain. "You're really going after them?" Silas shifted, concern breaking through his usual composure. "Against Draven's elite?" "They're my people," Rose replied simply, each piece of armor settling into place like coming home. The runes awakened at her touch, sending waves of familiar warmth through her body despite the bracelet's dampening presence. "And I protect what's mine." The whip came alive in her grip, its crack splitting the air with a flash of contained fire. Silas let out a low whistle of appreciation and concern. "Going in loud, then?" Rose's smirk returned, sharp as a blade's edge and twice as dangerous. "Oh, darling, I'm going to make sure Draven regrets ever touching what belongs to me." She turned toward the door, armor gleaming like banked coals. "But I won't be doing it alone. Rose strode back into the main bar, her fire-kissed armor casting dancing shadows across the walls. Each step radiated deadly purpose as she unclipped the rune-etched communicator from her belt. The ancient device hummed to life under her touch, its enchanted crystals pulsing with stored power. After a moment of static, Darren's voice cut through, his trademark sarcasm barely masking his concern. "Rose? Let me guess. This isn't about that drink you owe me." "Draven's elite hit the brownstone." Rose's voice was sharp as broken glass. "They took Evelyn and Caleb. Argoz barely made it out. I need you, Darren. Now." The silence that followed spoke volumes. When Darren's voice returned, all traces of humor had vanished. "Tell me what you need." "Everything you've got." Rose's fingers tightened around the communicator. "Weapons, gear, whatever will make Draven's men regret touching what's mine. Meet me at the bar." "Hold up," Steele crept into Darren's tone. "You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you? Because your solo crusades tend to end badly for everyone." "That's why I'm calling you, isn't it?" Rose snapped, though a hint of warmth slipped through her anger. "Just get here. Time isn't exactly on our side." "On my way," Darren replied, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken history between them. The line went dead with a soft crackle of magical energy. Rose returned to Argoz, her armoured form casting flickering shadows across the bar floor. The young goblin looked smaller somehow, her human disguise trembling at the edges as she clutched the gem like a lifeline. Its pulsing light seemed to match her rapid heartbeat. "We're going back." Rose's voice carried steel wrapped in velvet as she crouched to meet Argoz's eyes. Her armor clinked softly with the movement, the runes flickering like contained flame. "What if—" Argoz's voice cracked, raw with guilt and fear. "What if I make everything worse? They're already hurt because of me." Rose's hand found Argoz's shoulder, her grip firm but gentle. Even through the armor's metal, her touch conveyed strength. "Listen to me carefully." Her dark eyes blazed with conviction. "That gem chose you, not someone else, not me, you. It's time you started believing that wasn't a mistake. Oh, you've found your way here, have you? Curious about what's next?" Pauses. "Good, because there's plenty more where this came from."
If you want to stay in the know, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications, unless of course you enjoy surprises. But something tells me you don't like being left in the dark. Go on, make sure you don't miss a thing, because once you're here, Whispers, there's no turning back.